Well, I knew this was coming. So unfortunately I had to use crappy royalty-free music. The actual royalty-free music. Which I loathe because it really does not fit this video, I think. But to be able to post this, I have no choice. Okay, with that out of the way, this is part 2. The link to part 1 will be in the description of this video, and vice versa. Okay, I'm going to stop complaining. As a little disclaimer, this part will start after Fort Morgan, and continuing on from there. I would suggest watching the videos in order to actually understand where we're at. That being said, thank you for all of those who've seen part 1. I hope you all liked it. And thank you to YouTube for not actually taking the video down, because I'm putting a lot of work into this, and let's just say a lot of hours of labor. So thank you guys for not taking it down. Thank you. I've never put more work into a video in my life. Okay, that's all from me. So, let's get back to the video. So, we ended up having some time to kill before we needed to catch the ferry back to Dauphin Island. So we decided to take a drive through the Fort Morgan area, as it is technically considered a census-designated place and is also unincorporated. And the particular direction we're driving will eventually lead you into the more well-known city of Gulf Shores, Alabama. Mostly more well-known because it's the more built-up area and the more populated area, with all the bars and the clubs, I guess, and the very drunk teenagers and college kids. But mostly the drunk college kids. This particular area is the Gulf Highlands neighborhood of Gulf Shores, or where all the bars and clubs that I mentioned earlier are. This area is technically not considered Gulf Shores. It's considered an unincorporated community called Gask, which lies roughly 8 miles to the east of Gulf Shores, and is listed on maps as Gulf Shores. So for simplicity's sake, I will be referring to it as Gulf Shores. This is on the ferry ride back to Dauphin Island, and the GoPro get a little fogged up during this trip, so I apologize for that. And if you look closely and notice fins coming out of the water, no, those are not sharks. At least I hope they're not sharks. Otherwise, they are actually dolphins. So, for day 4, we decided to go back to the USS Alabama, because if you remember in last year's video, we only did the top portions of the ship. There is in fact an entire lower portion of the ship that is also a museum. And that is what this will be. But first, we decided to take a little detour through downtown Mobile, as that's where the USS Alabama is permanently docked. But this was mostly due to my brother's horrifically poor navigation skills. I mean, seriously, the boy couldn't read a map to save his own life, let alone anyone else's. But it ended up being quite nice. We're now entering downtown Mobile, which is actually quite nice. Which reminds me of a fact I have for anyone outside of Alabama. Mobile is actually home to the oldest Mardi Gras celebrations in the United States. Yes, we celebrated Mardi Gras before New Orleans did. Ha! Take that, New Orleans. What are you gonna do about it? Come at me, bro. My God, that meme is so old. This area specifically is considered the city's central business district, with all of the shops, bars, restaurants, nightclubs, and all those sorts of places. You will also notice how narrow the streets start to get, which I didn't expect from a city as big as Mobile. But looking on a map, their central business district isn't very big, so I'd imagine they have to cram a lot of businesses into one area. This person not even paying attention to the other side of the road. As you can see, the traffic is just as bad as in any other relatively large city. And this is where the streets get very, very narrow. We have no idea what this bus was doing. Now these are the kind of streets you expect in somewhere like Europe. Maybe Rome, Paris, Berlin, not Mobile, Alabama. These are some of the shops in the central business district. The one on the right here is a tavern type place called the Loda Biergarten, and I am not German, so do not expect me to be able to pronounce that right. The next building on the right here is the historic Sanger Theater, which was opened in 1927 and over the last 92 years has been home to various musical acts, artists, performers, and the like. So this next part of the video is the tour of the lower portion of the ship, and it's going to start at a weird part because some of the clips ended up being corrupted, and some of them just weren't usable because my GoPro fogged up and I didn't want to bother with it. And some I just cut out for time's sake. So I wanted to give that little disclaimer. Starting off, the Jeduk stand was more like the ship's ice cream parlor. It would have ice cream, candy, soda, and any of the other unhealthy things that military personnel probably shouldn't be eating. Okay, is it me, or does this mannequin look a little bit like Woody Harrelson? This cool, what I'm assuming is a classic Dr. Pepper bottle. This museum worker who I accidentally filmed, sorry sir, beds that the sailors used to sleep on. And they did not feel very comfortable. And of course, the chief petty officers had better accommodations than the regular men. A little board explaining what a chief petty officer is. The ship's store, because if you're going to be a literal floating city, you need a store. All aboard, everybody! We're open for business! the names of every sailor who served on the USS Alabama from 1942 to 1947. Unfortunately, this was the widest shot that I could get because there wasn't enough room to where I could step back enough to get all of the displays with all of the names in one shot. So I do apologize for that. This is a list of the commanding officers of the USS Alabama during World War II. Captain George B. Wilson, Captain Fred D. Kirtland, Captain Vincent R. Murphy, and Captain William B. Goggins. The service dress uniform of all officers and chiefs, and most famously worn and favored by Fleet Admiral Chester W. Nimitz. These uniforms were also used all the way up until 1975, when they were phased out by the then Chief of Naval Operations. These are the uniforms of a Mr. Owen Arthur Powell, who served in most of the USS Alabama's operations and was discharged from the U.S. Navy on January 12, 1946. This was the winter service uniform of U.S. Marine Corps officers, and this specific type of uniform is the longest serving U.S. military uniform because it is still in use today. Ignore the cleaning products on top of the display. The workers were doing some maintenance on the exhibits whilst I was filming. This uniform was the winter dress uniform for officers. Hey, you had to look good. What if your particular ship docked in Australia and you just happened to see a nice looking Australian woman? This is something I didn't know. I did not know the USS Alabama had a baseball team. Of course, it's not really surprising considering it was the 1940s. That was arguably the most popular sport in the US at the time. These are called watch buttons, and all enlisted men were required to wear them to show which sector and division they were assigned to. The temporary brig, which was used to house men who were caught fighting, when you had a little too much beer, or men who were drunk. Like this bozo right here. He got a little too drunk on some beer, and nearly broke another man's neck. You're gonna stay in there for the rest of the night, Joe. Don't argue with me, boy. Hey there, I'm Chief Petty Officer Davidson, and I'm gonna teach y'all some sailor slang. And that don't include that horrible foul language. There ain't gonna be no F-bombs on my ship. A cool little display they had for the mess hall. I'd like to know what they use for like the cake, the sausages, the eggs. The Chief Master at Arms, who was basically the ship's chief of police. He's the one who made sure all of the men were acting appropriately. Yeah, let's just say he wasn't a popular guy. The ship's butcher shop, because once again, as a battleship is a floating city, they even need a butcher shop. Well, that and because they were manly naval men, and as we all know, manly naval men need their meat. I shouldn't have done that deep of a voice. The vegetable preparation room, because you actually really do not want to contaminate your vegetables with any meats, especially raw meats. That actually can end up pretty bad if you're not careful.
They maximized every inch of space they could find.
This area was basically the ship's film storage locker, or motion picture locker. This is where they would store any films that they would show to the crew, any instructional films, newsreels, and all that kind of stuff. And if you didn't know, film back then was nitrate based, which was well known to be very flammable. So thank God a fire never broke out in this room of the ship. This is a little display talking about Guam during World War II, and in fact was taken over by Imperial Japanese forces just hours after the Pearl Harbor attack. Another display, this one talking about Iwo Jima, which most of you might know, and this one has Japanese artifacts in opposite to the previous one. And some of you might know Iwo Jima, perhaps ironically, from the 2006 films Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, both of which were directed by Clint Eastwood. And both are very good films. I recommend them, especially Letters from Iwo Jima because it focuses on the Japanese perspective, which I liked because it was different. It wasn't the usual American military World War II film. This one is particularly interesting to me because my grandfather, named Albert Wesley Brassfield, of which this photo was one of the last ones he took, as he is no longer with us, was actually in Tokyo Bay, stationed on a medical ship, a hospital ship, in Tokyo Bay. But, of course, with Brassfield luck, because anyone with the last name Brassfield is horrifically cursed, the particular ship that he was stationed on left Tokyo Bay the night before the Japanese Instrument of Surrender, which ended both the Pacific Theater and World War II as a whole, was signed. Meaning he literally missed it by probably 12 hours. Some of said artifacts my particular favorite of which is this doll that is dressed up in traditional Japanese clothing. Coming up are some examples of mock weapons that were used for training exercises, demonstrations, and that sort of thing. These are all mock-ups. These are not actual weapons that they would have used, because most of these were made out of wood or were cutaway weapons, as they were called. They were easily breakable, so if you accidentally got hit by one of them, it wouldn't hurt that bad. These are displays of some Navy hardware, such as diving suits, diving bells, early dive tanks, and other such things. I'll admit, even I thought that this was a real actor when I first saw him. But he's not. He's a hologram, like Tupac. Hey, he looks like that guy from the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. Which is the exact statement I heard uttered by what looked to be a 10-year-old. The ship's post office. Because imagine how many letters these men got on a monthly basis. I mean, look at all those letters. Tons of them. Okay, all I see is the word censored. We're just going to move on past this one? Nope. It's 2019? Nope. I said no. This is the room where they would load the magazines for the 20mm guns on the ship. And then some big bullets. The Combat Information Center contained the ship's radar and any other equipment needed for battle information. We are now in the ship's engine compartment, and it was particularly hot and humid down here. much as it probably would have been back in the 1940s. The ammunition storage compartment of the ship, which was particularly terrifying because I'm not sure if these are live rounds or mock rounds or what. Okay, in this case, I'm going to assume the rounds behind the glass are live rounds. If you've ever wanted to know, I wonder how big an artillery round is. Well, here's an artillery round with my dad for scale. Another engine compartment that I cannot remember exactly what it's called. The EENT clinic, or eyes, ears, nose, and throat, where they would take you if you had pink eye, an ear infection, or strep throat. The doctor's office. Hey, the dispensary. Alright, man. Oh, not that kind of dispensary. Good lord. What's wrong with y'all? The scariest room of the ship.
The surgeon's room.
My favorite room of the ship.
The isolation ward.
And this, of course, was the room you would be taken to if you had an infectious disease of such severity like tuberculosis, smallpox, measles, typhoid fever, or any such diseases that were highly infectious at the time. Oh wait, I think I found the actual scariest room on the ship. The dentist office. Spooky. And I'm serious. Look at this poor fellow right here. Does he look like he's having a good time? No. An exhibit devoted to the mysterious Tokyo Rose, which, contrary to popular belief, was not one individual, but was in fact the name given to all Japanese female radio broadcasters who were used by the Empire of Japan to broadcast propaganda messages designed to demoralize the American war effort. One reason for the name Tokyo Rose was due to the fact that all of the broadcasts were in English and Japanese. In fact, what you're hearing in the background now is a recreation created by the Department of Defense based on an actual Tokyo Rose broadcast. And this particular recreation was created in September 1945, roughly 1 month after the war officially ended. And despite the efforts of the Japanese being to demoralize American troops, the Tokyo Rose broadcasts pretty much completely failed, as many GIs who were interviewed in the years following the war claimed that they found it more entertaining than demoralizing. So, yeah, I'd call that a complete and utter propaganda failure. And a little fun fact, a woman by the name of Eva Toguri was actually arrested, tried, and sentenced for being Tokyo Rose. But these charges were later proven false. She was not Tokyo Rose, and she was paroled from prison in 1956, though she did not get an official presidential pardon until Gerald Ford in 1977. This is the ship's chapel, where crewmen of all faiths would come for religious services, all of which were usually held on Sunday. The blacksmith shop, which is really creepy to hear when you're down here just by yourself. The George Wallace Tunnel. Wait a minute. Oh, of course it is. Of course they had to call it the George Wallace Tunnel. Or, as I like to call it, the Human Bulldog Tunnel. Because George Wallace looked like a bulldog in human form. Okay, never mind. And this is an example of how humid it can get in southern Alabama. it was so humid outside and so cool inside the car, it fogged up the lens on my GoPro. So, another interesting location I wanted to show is the store you see on the left here. This is a grocery store called Greer's, and it's part of a chain of grocery stores located in Alabama, Mississippi, and Florida. So these are more small-sized grocery stores. So they're not going to be Walmart level of stuff. But they do have less weird people. Although, the one thing I do have to criticize is their alcohol prices. Yeah, let's just say I'll be sticking to my state-run liquor stores from now on. They're much cheaper. This is what a rainstorm on the beach looks like, in case anyone's ever wondered. So, on the last day of the trip, me and my mother, yes, my mother. Hey, you all be quiet out there. Hey, how many of you people actually do stuff with your parents, huh? Yeah. Not fun, is it? Sorry, get a bit aggressive there. We decided to basically walk as far westward down Dauphin Island as we could, which is why I've sped all of this up, because at this point this is no longer a travel video, it's more like a documentary on Dauphin Island. That's how long this whole video actually is. And this is what it looks like after it rains on an island. This is the West End Public Beach.
Did you have to pay to come up in here?
Which we weren't exactly sure if we could get in because you have to pay to actually go to the beach. But we were just walking through, and then my mom went to ask the lady if we could just walk through it, and she said that would be fine.
Oh, yeah.
How is they got somebody a big bonfire way out here where nobody can see it.
Which is illegal on some beaches, so check your local laws or beach ordinances or rules or something.
Glass, but do you see how frosted it looks?
Yeah.
That's because it's been tossed in the sand. It's called sea glass. You be careful with that.
Yes, I now have an actual piece of sea glass. Now, I don't think we were supposed to be walking through here, because at this current time in May, it was sea turtle egg laying season, so yeah.
What the heck is that?
An alien.
It almost looks like a snail with little eyeballs falls.
A few little billboards talking about conservation efforts on Dauphin Island. specifically a fund that the county set up in order to
Project Amanda.
help preserve Dauphin Island.
Mobile County Commission.
See, that's pretty cool. Oh, look. Nice.
A board talking about
That's the
sea turtle etiquette.
want us to turn off all the lights.
Do not approach a turtle coming out of the water.
Do not walk on the dunes.
I think we already broke that one.
Oh, did you scratch yourself on something?
Sorry?
Of course, it might have been where I was scratching.
That school only has 100 kids in it. Say only 6 teachers. 16
That's 16 kids worth. That's nice. Pirates Bar and Grill down that way.
That's the one we tried to go to last year. And I misread it.
We then went to a souvenir store called the Treasure Trove, the same one we went to last year. And the only thing I picked up was this little jar that I put some authentic Dauphin Island sand and some authentic Dauphin Island seashells into to remind myself that my life is not in fact a swirling torrent of pain and misery, and that so every time I started out my life decisions, I can turn to my left and remind myself I'm not a complete failure. Yay! I'm kidding. Good lord. I really just bought it because it looked interesting and I wanted to put some sand into it. Oh, I almost forgot. The other thing I bought was this cool little thermos that I put my coffee in that looks like an artillery shell, which I will not be walking around in public with for obvious reasons.
Because they're not. Like, they're not.
And then we just decided to drive around for a bit and look at some of the houses on the island, which we probably shouldn't have been doing, but do I honestly look like the kind of person who gives a flying? No, I don't. And to top it off, we ate at a place called Real Deal Seafood and Barbecue, like fishing reel, get it? Which is exactly what it sounds like. Seafood and barbecue. And it was pretty good. What do you follow a barbecue with? Logically, ice cream. Because who doesn't love ice cream? And in fact, there was a ice cream shop next to Real Deal called Island Rainbow. And my favorite part of this shop was that you could pick, like, milkshakes, sundaes, these things called twisters, which to me are just bootleg versions of a Blizzard from Dairy Queen. But for the flavors, you picked from the ice creams that they had out for that day. Finally, I found an ice cream shop that isn't just chocolate, vanilla, strawberry, Neapolitan. Something with some variety for once. And finally, I would like to show off some very strange things that I found on the beach. So we were fishing Friday night because we actually had some daylight to kill. And let's just say if you go out far enough, you're gonna find some really strange things on the beach. This is some kind of very dead, very large fish that I found just randomly on the Mississippi Sound side of the beach. But what scares me more than the size of the fish is the size of whoever or whatever in God's name killed it. See? I knew sea monsters were real, and this is just his lunch!
And then they're going to eat me.
Then there was this. Yes, if you're thinking right now, wait, is that a... Yes, that is exactly what you're thinking it is. This is a toilet. An honest-to-God toilet that we found half buried in the beach. Just right there on the beach. And it was a toilet because I checked. Why is a toilet buried halfway into the beach? I don't know. There's no context. I don't have any context for you. So, you all, along with me, we will just never know. So, there you go. Well, everyone, that is my 2019 Dauphin Island travel video. So, I hope you all liked it. I hope you all found it informative, funny, and just all around entertaining. And I want to say once again, thank you for 2,373 views on last year's video. I legitimately did not expect it to get that many views. I expected maybe a couple hundred people to watch it, not 2,300 of you. But thank you, especially if any of you are planning a trip to Dauphin Island. You can use this as your travel guide instead of one of those cheap, crappy ones you get from a rest stop or something. And if you all liked this one, you all can leave a like, a dislike, by clicking the little thumb icons on your computer screens or phone screens, whatever. Comment on it, share it with your friends, and I will see you guys in my next video.